to Full Service Radio.
Full Service Radio.
Full Service.
Full Service. Full Service.
Full Service Radio.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's Melissa, and you're tuning in to the Edible Activist Podcast. Welcome. This show highlights Black and brown edible activists in the food and farming space, and not that kind of edible some of you guys probably think about. We're talking about food activism on this show. That brings us back to the land. Sorry, guys, I can't get this shit together today. I am the creator of Food Talks DC, and I travel all around the DC area and beyond to document personal food journeys, anecdotes, and perspectives from everyday people on topics related to health, tradition, environment, food justice, culture, and more. Every week, I will bring in a special guest to hear their personal food journey firsthand and learn how they are channeling edible activism in the DC area. We don't promote people, we tell stories and empower communities. So today on the show, I'm really excited to have Jeff Edwards. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning.
Hey.
Peace, everyone.
Don't leave me here by myself.
Peace and blessings.
I'm excited to have Jeff Edwards, who is the creator of New Healing Arts, which we're going to learn about later on in the show today. He's based in Montgomery County, which is a suburb that many of you guys are probably familiar with, right outside of D.C., and you hold a lot of licenses, and I couldn't spell them out, but I want the world to hear this. So can you just say that all out for me? Because that's just important. I was impressed by this brother and all these licenses that you hold.
I mean, it's necessary to do some of the work, but so I'm a licensed acupuncturist, and also board certified art therapist.
So this was Masters
of Art Therapy, and then I also studied.
Because he hit me with MS, ATR, BC, LCP. I said, okay, damn, I'll find out when I get here.
Gotta look good on paper.
But anyway, you smart. He is smart, okay? So anyway, welcome, Jeff. Again, I'm really thrilled to have you. And actually, Lita, my photographer, brought Jeff, introduced us, and I'm just excited to get to learn about who you are. Thank you for sharing a bit of your story with me beforehand, and I know that you are the creator of this wonderful platform and practice called New Healing Arts, which you're going to learn about. He's from Milwaukee, everyone, so we're gonna dig into his roots and find out what it was like growing up Black in Milwaukee. Can I just say that because for me, I've never been to Milwaukee. And so I don't think about Black people in Milwaukee, as ignorant as that probably sounds. I just don't. I'm admitting that. So I am genuinely interested in just learning about your upbringing in Milwaukee and just your involvement in this whole food space. So we're going to talk about healing space, guys, because with New Healing Arts, he integrates arts and food and wellness, to heal people, So we're going to learn a lot about that today. But I actually want to read to you guys just a bit of his story before we get started, so we jump in. So Jeff's words: the garden, clinic, and classroom, 3 spaces you can find Jeff on any given day. He holds these spaces as one and the same. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jeff Geo Edwards is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and arts educator with his practice based in D.C. His earliest memories of learning the connection of land and spirit are from time spent during the summer in his grandparents' home deep in the Mississippi Delta. So we're going to get into all of that because I told you my family's from Mississippi, so I need all the goodness of the story. Let's see, where did I leave off at? Those early impressionable years planted seeds that have grown and are tended in his life's work today, which is rooted in knowing land as liberation and reclaiming, remediating, and re-imaging our ancestral healing traditions. And I could read the rest of it, but I won't because it'll just spoil the interview. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So who is Jeff? Let's talk about where you grew up.
So a little bit about Milwaukee. So that response is the typical response from Milwaukee.
I don't feel bad then.
No, you shouldn't. It's a very interesting place, Midwest, just north, maybe about an hour or so of Chicago. So kind of a microcosm of the same thing that you find in Chicago. But, most folks, familiarity when they hear Milwaukee, is Black people in Milwaukee? Yes, indeed. It's a long history of of people of color in general in Milwaukee, but in terms of like the north side of Milwaukee, I'm from Sherman Park, Sherman the capital, represent.
All right, shout out Sherman Park.
Sherman Park. So that's that's neighborhood where I'm grew
Rep
up.
your set. Rep it today.
Similar to most Midwestern cities where you have this migration from the
Yes.
south to the north,
Yep.
and people have jobs, factories go away, people end up with jobs, 80s come, and we know the rest of the story.
Yes,
Reagan
we
era,
do.
it hit us,
Yeah.
but it's an interesting place. I love it. It's home. It's cold. It's
It is
Wisconsin.
cold. It
but
sounds cold.
Still home.
So, how did you evolve into this space? 'Cause you do a lot.
Yeah, I do, and it's kind of it's an ongoing, I guess, metamorphosis, if
Yes.
you will. Typical childhood. Growing up. School, sports, food. With my parents and my father growing up on a farm, my mother growing up, her dad, was a gardener in Mississippi. So we always had plants and, vegetables, tomatoes, those type of things growing in the yard, but nothing large scale. But, just,
It was normal.
it was kind of a normal thing just growing up. And it was more, as I came of age and got out of high school, that more of the relationship around the wellness, really developed. But, like I say, though, summers going down south is where I really made that connection. Even though we grew things, it was a different
Yeah.
type of, relationship with the land and sitting there, at the table, picking cow peas and butter beans and, these type of things that we didn't grow, but you get to see the land, and you ride around, and you see the countryside, and you're out there running and, shooting BB guns and doing all the stuff that you couldn't do in the city. So that was
Exactly. I was
always
just gonna
like,
say.
yeah. So it was just a matter of, like I say, those seeds were planted, and it just took time for me really coming into adulthood and especially fatherhood, that all these different things just started coming back to the surface.
And sorry, guys, I missed that. He is a dad and he is a husband.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shout out.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to the
So
kids
father
and the
of 3 boys.
Ooh.
Got my hands full.
Three boys.
3 boys.
Three
14,
kings,
11,
yo.
and a young 2-year-old. So
Big ups to you.
yeah, busy.
Seriously. Yeah.
Life is full.
Life is full. Raising 3 queens. Kings, sorry. I didn't mean to say queen. Kings. In my crooked letter, okay, so I told you, third of my family's from Mississippi. I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. I love Mississippi. You went to Jackson State.
Oh, yeah.
But before that, like you said, you grew up going to your grandparents' house and just being around them. What did you pull from that experience, and what did you learn you had to just being around your elders?
I mean, it was just a completely different, world. From, of course, Milwaukee is the city, is the north, and just being here where everyone is just around is. Everyone knows each other. Everyone speaks. It was small town. This is Indianola, Mississippi, where this is my maternal side grandparents. My father's parents passed before I was born. So a lot of the history that I know of them has just come from oral history and just getting the stories. But I knew very intimately my mother's parents. So just spending time and just sitting around. We have a very rich history in the family also of music. So these, this is the South, this is church folks. Definitely the church, and so that's more of the spiritual side, but in terms of the music and that tradition in my family, which really informed like myself and what I've been chosen to infuse into my sons as well. But being in Mississippi and just being around all that and the food and my grandmother cooking and my grandfather bringing fresh food, it was like, this is all food that's coming within 1 or few mile radius from the home. This is and this is very large.
You didn't have to use the word
families.
hyperlocal back then, right? It just was what it was. Normal.
And these are large families. Like on my mother's side, it was 11 children. She's one of 11. My father's one of 13. So I have when I say
Who's
beyond
one of
the tribe,
13?
My father is one of 13. And my
God
mother was
bless.
one of 11, and they all have kids, and they have kids, and their kids have kids. So when I say both sides, we're literally like a village.
We're a
city.
village
We're a
too.
small
I
city.
feel you, homie. I feel you. We're a small city. I'm trying to tell you. That's what's up. That's what's up. Do you ever go back?
Oh yeah. I was just.
That just makes me so
I was
happy.
just there in May.
Okay.
In May,
Okay.
I actually took my boys because this was my son is a musician. He plays the bass. He's a jazz musician. So I wanted to take them to be able to meet my uncles and go to some of the places because, like I say, that music history, like a little bit of a sidebar. So my grandfather grew up in the home with B.B. King. All right, so when you look at, my great-grandfather, when you see the history of when BB ran away from home on his bike and went to go stay with the Fairs, that was my great-grandfather. And so they all grew up, but then my grandfather ended up marrying BB's first cousin. So it's all kind of
Shut the front
mixed
door.
in histories, but in terms of like
It's in your blood.
It's in the music is there. It's in the blood. So and it's there.
Wow. Okay, so you studied at Jackson State.
Right.
That was for undergrad.
That was undergrad.
Okay.
Jackson was lovely. It was a great experience.
Shout out Jackson.
So
All
ASU
right.
homecoming, we just won. We played Mississippi
We
Valley
did
State.
win. I'm
win.
trifling. I didn't
We
even
did win. We won. I wasn't there, but
You were there in spirit.
I was there in spirit.
That's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Now, what did you study at Jackson State?
So I was a psychology major.
Okay.
But actually, when I first started out, thought that I was going to be an engineer. I did engineering programs in high school in the summer, thinking that, and got to school, and it just wasn't the fit. So psychology ended up psychology and art. That was more, you go off undergrad and having permission to explore creative sides of yourself, which up to then, I'd done some writing and stuff,
Yeah.
but in the past, but really like being serious about, okay, as far as accepting arts as part of my identity, or artists as part of my identity and who I am.
Wow.
And Jackson was definitely responsible, for those
That
influences.
just
yeah.
warms my little heart
Yeah.
because there's a lot of bad things going on in Jackson right now, so but to hear stuff like this just warms my heart up so much. It's like home. Even I was born there, but I wasn't raised there. Every time I go, like North Jackson, shout out.
You gotta go Jackson, shout out.
Beaverbrook, where my grandmother lives.
You gotta go back. So yeah, it's lovely.
I'm going back next month.
Okay.
We go every year. It's been a family thing every single year that we go down there. They come up here I can't even tell you how many times we made that drive down there. I can't even. And my mother don't fly. Okay.
Oh.
So that's a 15-hour drive every single year. I'm like, really? We might need to get you a nightcap when we get you on the plane, okay? Anyway, for those who are just tuning in, Melissa here, the Edible Activist Podcast. I am chatting with Jeff Edwards, who is a licensed acupuncturist. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Great. He has a practice called New Healing Arts, which we're going to learn about a little bit later. But I just wanted to dig a little bit into his roots, growing up in Milwaukee, studying in Jackson, Mississippi, at Jackson State, actually. And so how did your practice come about? Like, tell me a little bit about New Healing Arts.
So New Healing Arts was it was kind of a after the fact. So kind of fast forward, psychology, art. What was the natural integration of those two? Oh, I'm gonna do some art therapy.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to help people and do things, but I want to use the arts to do it. So I went ahead and went through the program and was doing good work with kids who were incarcerated, and that was pretty much the fullness of like my internships and then my first job and graduate. That's what got me out here in the DMV was working as an art therapist in the Juvenile Detention Center in Fairfax. Right.
Wow.
So it was the New Healing Arts came about because I felt that I was in a space which was great. I was working in mental health, but all of these cases and all these people that I was meeting and interacting with, the mental was one piece of the whole.
Right.
And from working in the hospital, inpatient psychiatric care, and that between that and the detention center, just seeing like diet was very important with people. It was like in terms of not having some type of grounding in themselves spiritually, not having connection to the people around. So it was just all these different factors that made me want to dig deeper beyond the art therapy and start, okay, what are some of the herbs? And so that's going on at the same time that so my second son, he's had issues, in the past, especially growing up with asthma. So it was a lot of these kind of co-occurring, experiences that really led to me like, okay, I want to do something that's greater than just, or just a little bit grander, a lot more holistic than just the art therapy that I was doing. And that's what led to New Healing Arts.
Wow. So what have been some of the, I don't want to really say like revelations, but what have you pulled from that? Because it's interesting, like you sit down and, you've been noticing that it's more than just just a mental illness thing. Like it is connected to them may not being connected to other people. It was a mind, body, and spirit thing. What have been some of the stories from the I don't want to call them patients because that doesn't sit well with me. It almost implies that they're sick, and I know they have, but like, what have been some of the stories that that you've pulled from in working with individuals?
So leading up to New Healing Arts, so part of my requirement to graduate in the art therapy program, I created a pilot program called Rites of Wellness. It was basically just taking rites of passage and applying a wellness model to that. And I got a chance to pilot that for my thesis. So basically it was, I was working with a young man. This is an amazing story. And this is kind of the story that let me know, like, okay, you're here to do a particular type of work that's not going to be like what other people are doing. This is
I
like,
love it.
This
I
is
love
your
it.
path.
I love it.
So I was working with a young man who was living with cerebral palsy. He was 15 at the time, and so the whole gist of the whole project was figuring out, okay, what are the things that are going to be the most important for him transitioning from adolescence into adulthood. And around that independence, a lot of that had to deal with him particularly was his mobility. So I spent a lot of time just being a fly on the wall, going to the home, spending time with the mother. It was kind of like being an anthropologist, just like an ethnographic study of just going and just being and just gleaning all this, information from being in the place, but not really being a part of it. Doing art with the family as a whole, doing art with Ashton, the young man as a whole, and all that led up to a rites of passage ceremony where we basically brought all of his family and myself, because it was part of my project. I had my family. It's just a small community in a space to create a rites of passage ceremony. But part of this was creating the space. So we had been making all of this art. I'm like, okay, what are we going to do with? And leading up to the day, we ended up creating this amazing threshold. And so with him and mobility being the driving piece of his independence and that transition to adulthood, we created a long hallway where we lined up photos of him from childhood all the way up to his current age. His mom had brought in clothes of him. And so imagine this. We're in this long room. Him, his father, and his mother walk in. He's in a wheelchair. The first third of the way is the three of them. Father stops. He gets out of the wheelchair and into a walker. Next, the third, he's with his mother, and they walk. She help him with the walker. All right. Mind you, at this same time, the community, we got to do new bows and djembes. We're drumming and everything. All this is going on.
Oh, my gosh.
His mother stops the last third. This child walks through the threshold and sits at the drum and drums. And from that, it's like everybody.
Like my eyes are tears, okay?
No, mind you, this is a much younger me, and just seeing like that was a very powerful. I mean, it was a rites of passage for me too, because I don't facilitate. I was done small stuff, but not anything to this level that let me see like, okay, this is a very particular. This is something special. You need to.
Oh my gosh!
Expand this. You got to expand this. And that was really the nugget. That was the birth of New Healing Arts before even New Healing Arts was a name. That was it.
Whoa. Okay, so that wowing me into a break because this left eye is filled with a tear. Damn, man. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, guys. We'll be right back. You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artist Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. right, guys, we're back. Melissa here with the Edible Activist Podcast, chatting here with Jeff Edwards of New Healing Arts. And gosh, if you just missed the first 20 minutes of that conversation, it'll be up on Full Service Radio / Edible Activist, something like that. Like Alexa's laughing at me. And iTunes. We're on iTunes. Yo, that was powerful. Oh my gosh. Wow. So Jeff just walked us through one of an experience that he had prior to the birth of New Healing Arts, in working with a gentleman who had cerebral palsy, and just this whole integration of music and
there was food,
which we're going to talk about, in arts, and just wow, this rites of passage, this whole framework that you created with your business. Actually, what is your website? Because I was what's the...
So definitely New Healing Arts. You can go to www.newhealingarts.com. That's new, N-U.
Yes.
New Healing Arts.
Because I was reading a little bit about the, what's the name of the framework again? The
rights of wellness.
Rights of wellness, but yours is rights of wellness. So I was actually reading a little bit about that. So, and I did not expect to get that story. So go to his website, read a little bit about it, contact Jeff. Like, that's very powerful. Let's talk about food. You know, food is everything. It's connected to everything. These are stories that bring us back to the land. Even if we're not talking about food intentionally all the time, it's all connected. And so let's talk about how you integrate food wellness into the work that you do.
Right. So fast forward into now, I'm putting on a different hat. This is more my herbalist acupuncturist hat, where the food becomes a lot more, not just relevant, but it's a much more of an important piece of the work, because for one, as an acupuncturist, you're trained first before you insert it. First, you need to be the medicine or be the needle. That's the first piece, one. But then nutrition is always the pillar of where you want to start in working with people before you talk about, okay, I'm going to, put a needle here, or we're going to suggest these herbs. So that's one piece. But then herbs and food are one and the same.
Yeah.
This is plant medicine. This is nourishment coming from the earth that's for us.
Yeah.
So, and then you'll find, of course, that most of the foods that we eat, also other parts of that same plant, are considered the herbs that we use medicinally. If not, the food is the medicinal part. So it's all one and the same. So that's really where the food is involved in me starting to garden. When I first got so I've been in my home since 2009, so this is 9 years. And the first thing, we cut the grass in the yard. We get in this house, cut the grass. My father happened to be in town and helping us with the move. And the first thing that we did after cutting the grass was get a plot started. It's the first thing my father did for me was get a plot started. Okay, we're going to plant some tomatoes, some peppers. So we just planted basically the same like at the house in Milwaukee, planted some things. And so I wasn't full on gardening, but I knew enough about it, how to maintain this, and from the start. But from that one, having growing boys who can eat, it became necessary.
Eat
and food
you out
is
of house and home.
Eat you out of house and home. So just the reality, children in general. So these were a lot of the pieces. I was like, okay, there's something to this. The more I began to dig and more into my herbal practice, the food was equally becoming a significant part, and just went from that. And then I had one of my acupuncturist teachers who exposed me to the work of, if you're familiar with Masanobu Fukuoka, he's Japanese. He's like one of the pioneers. Before there was like permaculture was a thing. He was the book One Straw Revolution.
The One Straw Revolution.
Wow. It's about no-till gardening. It was like a model of gardening and farming and gardening that requires none of the tilling. You're not going in and disrupting the land. You're just following and paying attention to the natural cycles, how things grow, and working with nature accordingly. But how did that connect with acupuncture? The body is a landscape. We have an ecology of the body, if you will. And so
isn't it fair to compare our own ecosystem with that of the soil that's underneath our feet?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, definitely. And so as far as, and that is at the the heart of Chinese medicine. And it's so with that connection being with the body and the land, it was just as I was learning more about the anatomy and the physiology and working with people in the clinic, me as a gardener was also growing, and I was getting more into the natural farming. I had always done organic, but how it was very manicured. I had my row of kale, my row of collards. Now you go in the yard and it's like, okay, is there a garden? It's definitely a garden.
Right.
Definitely a garden. Everything is growing as is.
As is. You might just have to push some stuff back to find it.
Push it back to find it. It's growing away because it's
That's
just the
real
plants
talk,
are
though.
very
Let them do their thing.
Yeah, so that's just a very important part of in how I do my gardening. And so the food and the herbs are growing up in my space now all together.
Well, you say grow your medicine, know your medicine.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Grow your because you know where it's coming from. You've put the work in, and there's nothing as rewarding as if you've grown these pole beans, and then you go out and you harvest a big basket, a big bowl of pole beans, and it goes fresh
It's
from the
mine.
bowl,
Like, I
and
did
you cook it right
this.
now. This is fresh. This is
fresh.
when you say living foods, live foods, you don't get more fresh than
And it won't taste any
fresh out
better
of the
than
yard.
that.
Fresh tea, fresh herbs harvested, fresh out the ground. Yeah.
All summer. People are just so nice to us, going to gardens and farms, sending us home with like little real goodie bags. That's a real goodie bag. Kale, okra.
Okra. Oh, don't
You
get to talking
name
about
it.
okra. That's a gem for me. That's a special one.
Oh my gosh. So in your work, how is it important? Like, how important is it to you to continue honoring your ancestors?
Okay. So
Got him, because he's
me.
about to. Because you got a little bit less than 15 minutes,
got
so
less than 15 minutes.
But you
All right.
can't take up the whole 15 minutes. But
No.
I'm ready for you though.
So no. The ancestry piece is strong, especially for those of us who may have grown up and you aren't as connected to beyond 2 or 3 generations in terms of your genealogy. So understanding your genealogy, knowing the names of these ancestors, where they lived, knowing that if we're in Mississippi and this is Choctaw County, Mississippi,
Which
and all
I've been
right
to the
and
casino,
so-
unfortunately, but I've been.
and this land and the plants that they grown. For me, that's a large part of my practice in terms of connecting with, what are the plants, what are the foods that I should be eating? That's something that comes up for like, what should I eat? Well, what did your ancestors? I mean, that's a pretty pop. It's not a
Trina hit us with that. Trina Cobbler,
okay.
she hit us with that.
Okay. Is that no? That's right and exact. So you should definitely be eating how they ate, but then how you connect with growing that is talking. I mean, you got to talk to the plants and talk to
the
your
plants.
ancestors. And you got to go to the place. For me, what was significant was going to the place and touching the soil, going to the land. So I mentioned, we were just in Mississippi in May. So going to the actual land and these pecan trees that my grandfather planted. And getting some of the pecans and holding those pecans in your hand. It's a different connection.
I got the amen shake over here. My mother loves pecans,
bring
and my
those pecans
grandmother
with
will go knock them bad boy. We'll get the ones that are already on the floor. My grandmother, love her, but she'll get a whole bag and send them up here, and my mother will tear into those.
That's it. Connect. And so having that way of connecting with those stories, the names, and connecting with the plants that they grew, and you began growing them and talking to them. And that's just how it was, a collective memory, the way that just some things you're going to read and study in the book, but it's things and insights that come to you that are beyond you when you're in this space and working. It's like, it's a very spiritual work when you really garden, you out there
Absolutely.
talking to the plants and chanting and singing, and you thinking and pulling up images of a photo of your ancestors, and you talking to their names, and you garden. You grow deeper and deeper, and then just things start coming to you. Insights, yeah.
Okay, so if you guys just, anybody who just tuned in, Melissa here with the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm here with Jeff Edwards, the founder, creator of New Healing Arts, who is a licensed acupuncturist, amongst many, many other things, actually. So I've been reading Michael Twitty's book, The Cooking Genie, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with.
I'm not.
Definitely check it out. It has like really pulled me more, and like I want to get blood samples for everybody. I want to walk around and go to Mississippi and be like, give me a hand, boop, 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 you know, because I am very blessed to still have both sets of my grandparents. Now, both of my grandfathers are not my paternal grandfathers, though. That's the only. They are not my paternal grandfathers, but I do have both of my maternal. Both of my grandmothers are my maternal grandmothers, and I do not. I really want to research the genealogy, even though I may only have it on my grandmother's side. And that's really important to me. And as I evolve into this work, and you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times, and I'm going to say this over and over and over again, this really is spiritual work for me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I felt like when we were in Detroit, and I think because it was just like, which we'll talk about more next week, guys, tune in for that. I think that's what it was, because there's so much Black history in Detroit and so much Black pride in Detroit. And I just felt like there was just like a much more stronger connection because of the history there. But we got to connect. And so that's part of, you know, this whole platform. And it's not just food itself, but it's food that's bringing us back to where we started.
Yes.
You know, like, so like as this work, like how you talk about this being spiritual for you, what are you passing down to your boys?
So they get it, and I've tried to be creative. And they're young, but I know, for example, through the music is one.
Yes.
Through the music. So through the music and being exposed to that, and then just taking them around and not being too intentional about it, being intentional while at the same time unintentional, but just allowing them to just always talking about it. Because when my parents and I would be around family who would talk about these stories, I wasn't actively paying attention, but those seeds were sown, and that's what some of the stories where I pull up, and I was like, I remember Uncle so-and-so said this, and it's like, okay, I was paying attention, but I wasn't. And so, but they're getting it in that way. They get it because my father is very involved in in their lives. So anytime that we're around, he's always sharing stories and making sure that they know. But yeah, that trip was about them touching the land, and seeing the land. No, you need to see the house.
Absolutely.
You need to stand on the land. We're not just going to look at a photo. You need to come.
Ain't no drive-by. We're going to get out.
We're going to
take your shoes off.
Take your shoes off. We're going to walk around. We're going to spend some time out here. Don't worry about the snakes.
Exactly.
It's okay.
You know what? So my dad is from Jackson, Mississippi. My mom is from Alabama, Butler, Alabama. Town so small you blink, you miss it, okay? I'm talking like, no, there's a 4-way stop sign that hangs up in the air. And so my grandmother goes to, there's a small grave near a church where I believe they used to go to, where so my grandmother's a Carlisle. So there are a ton of, I believe, Carlisles buried over there. And so just about every Mother's Day, my grandmother goes over there and she visits. Brings flowers and everything, you know. And so I feel like my next trip in Mississippi, I need to go walk around, plant my feet, you know, and just start talking to some folks.
Are you familiar? Have you seen the cartoon? I think it's Disney. I'm not sure. Have you seen Coco?
I have not seen Coco. I've heard of Coco, but I haven't seen Coco
today. Just because Coco was like ancestral tapping 101. How to tap into the ancestors 101. I mean, that's pretty much what the movie is about. But
wow, I never knew that.
So we also went to the cemeteries in the land.
Years ago, right?
Yeah.
Years old.
When you go to these places, it's something that's beyond. People try to explain it different ways, and not to get too esoteric about it. But I mean, there's something to being in touch with these places and revisiting and going that feeds the ancestors, and they feed you. There it is.
All right, guys, we're going to take a really quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to wrap up. So, yeah, I'm having fun, man. I'm just saying. Welcome back, everyone, to the Edible Activist Podcast. Melissa here, chatting with Jeff Edwards of New Healing Arts. And we've been talking about a lot, man. This has been really great. I got to bring you back. 45
Please,
minutes just ain't never enough. But you've already just been, just been speaking to me, just even for, again, this whole, like, tracing back my genealogy, and especially just, like, the food aspect, just really wanted to tap into all of that, like, that. Just pulling me in, man, pulling me in. I'm really going to be thinking a lot about that when I travel back to Mississippi next month. So for sure. So, my whole platform, Edible Activism, it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, it's a movement because and I meant for it to be like a fun movement because everybody is not necessarily doing the work or has a platform. And I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. You can just be conscious. You can be intentional about a few things, and I feel like everyone is doing work that is very different in various capacities. So that's how, so an edible activist is a myriad of a ton of things, So within the work that you do, like, how would you define that for yourself?
Edible activism. So, I mean, the first thing, so this is kind of something that was taught to me. And so just when you look at the words itself, like, words can be very delicious, right? You hear something, you hear a good poem.
I like that. Words can be so delicious.
Words can be very delicious experience. You can have a very delicious experience.
I'll stop it on that.
Right. Snap. So it's just a very delicious, edible. So activism, I mean, that you are engaged in the way that's nourishing and delicious to the people who are participants or recipients of what it is and that's
I like that.
Yeah, it's just
right?
It's just like delicious community.
Delicious community. Whoa, that might be the next team. No, I'm joking.
Go ahead.
I like it.
Yeah.
So what legacy do you want to build for you and your family? Do you think about that a lot?
I think about it a lot because the reality of the world that we live in. So this is kind of my herbalist and getting into the naturalist type of stuff and understanding that the soil isn't what it was. The water isn't. I mean, we have it, but things have changed. And so that when I mentioned remediation, like remediation of the soil and ourselves, that's definitely important. But in terms of legacy, to carry on this and awe and wonder for the sacredness of land and everything that it provides for us. And part of that is going to involve us remediating because there's been a lot of harm in the soil, and then just from practices and pollution and all the antibiotics and everything that's in the water and the soil. When you really start digging into naturalist type of work, it's like, okay, it can be overwhelming. So conservation is another part of that too, but it's being able to keep enough awe and wonder about what sustains us to be able to maintain it. And so if my sons and my grandchildren, if they maintain a curiosity and wonder about the land and why it's sustaining and how it's been able to do, then I think that I've done my job, because that's going to make you engage in a way, because the importance of keeping it. Like 50 years from now, we don't know. Like we know, like with climate change and a lot of things.
We know where we headed.
We know where we're headed. So if they can be prepared ahead of time to cherish it and get that sown in themselves,
Absolutely. And I think that's even, I mean, this whole conversation, we can just add so many different layers, but as a Black male raising 3 Black boys, I'm assuming, and in the times that we are, where we're not connected, we're more connected to technology, which I have appreciation for technology. I have appreciation for science, but because we already have, and when we were in Detroit, we were talking about this, even with T, we talked about, like, there's a lot of trauma associated to connected to the land and our ancestry and our roots, and we've carried that trauma for
Oh, yeah.
so many years, you know? So you being in the position that you are and what you're, you know, teaching your kids and what you're, you know, raining down on them is so important. So very important, because they're staying connected. And even if you don't think they're listening, like, they are, you know? And so that's the important piece to me, and really looking to the land for healing.
That's where it's at. And
That's where my healing is at. I'm going to the land for my healing. That's where I need to go. I don't know about everybody else, but that's where we all need, especially as people of color.
And we've been duped to a degree to think
That's my favorite word. We've been duped.
We've been duped to not know that it's there. To think that what quote unquote advancements in science or technology have improved upon what we need to sustain us, since there was a human walking, needing that the earth has always been there for however million years, to think that just in the last century that we have something.
Right. Well, didn't Christopher, joking. Somebody had a joke the other day, like, what tribe is he from? I died laughing. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, like, really. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it.
Yeah, for real. Well, this has been so great. Oh my gosh, I don't want to leave the studio.
Can I come back? I would
Yes,
love
you
to come
can
back.
come back. Oh my gosh, we're totally going to bring you back. All right, so where can we find you on Instagram and wherever other social media handles you have?
All right. I'm on Instagram. I'm definitely on there, so you can definitely find me. So it's words that I manifest. So
Which
it's
I love,
words,
by the way.
and it's underscore in between each word.
Okay.
So it's words underscore that underscore. So
Get that, y'all. All right.
Words
Or
that
go
I
to my
manifest.
page and follow him.
So that's more of a personal page. In the past, I had a New Healing Arts. There's a New Healing Arts page, Instagram page. It's not very active, but there are some posts and some
You
good
are
information.
New Healing Arts.
I am New Healing Arts, but I'm not actively I think that how I choose to look at Instagram. So this is kind of going back to
break it down.
Enough of the generation that I'm pre and post digital kind of.
Yeah,
thing.
we're stuck in the middle. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 38.
We're stuck in the middle. I'm 36. We're stuck in the middle.
So we know prior to
Exactly.
and everything after to. So and with that, I'm still coming around to how Instagram, but it's a great tool for creative.
It really
it's
is.
amazing, and so I do. So the words that I manifest isn't my herb pages, the life of the herbalist kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all the facets of how I engage with art and music and herbs being a part of is more of the real person as opposed to here's a page full of all the plants that I write about, and like I would like to.
Yeah.
You're gonna get some
That's all
jazz
good.
and some hip hop and
That's who you
some
are.
visual art, and you're gonna get a couple plants and some recipes, and then
And
some more
I'm here
music.
for it. And I'm here for it. Okay.
And then Facebook, New Healing Arts as well.
All right. And if you can't find them, go to Food Talks DC on Instagram and then just click the @ button where I put a post up and boom. There we go. All right. So really quickly. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Okay. So we know where to find you. So we're going to close out this segment. I always do this really fun rapid fire, ask you a couple questions, just to see what your interests are and, things like that. So I'm going to start off by asking, what is your favorite leafy green?
Violet greens.
Violet green. Okay.
Curveball.
Curveball.
It was dandelion greens, but most violets, the
dandelion
violets that come up the
greens.
little heart-shaped leaves.
Okay.
That grow. That's been pretty much when I saute some mushrooms or something and throw in some
You need to write me a whole list of everything you know. Okay.
violets.
All right. An edible activist you look up to.
So I got to keep it Milwaukee.
right.
So if you're familiar with Will Allen, Growing Power, have you heard of
Yes.
Growing Power? So
Yes.
Will Allen,
Yes.
even though the farm isn't,
Yeah.
operating at the, currently, but in terms of just being a pioneer in terms of hoop housing and showing how in an urban setting, he's everybody knows Will was one of the
Right.
people who was really putting out.
Absolutely.
This is how you grow and sin. That's right
Yep.
in Northside Milwaukee. That's
All right, Northside. All right. Sweet, spicy, sour, salty.
sweet, salty.
Sweet and salty.
The best thing they could have did was the sea salt almonds.
Oh, yeah.
Dark chocolate almonds.
Right.
When they decide
Right,
we're
when
gonna
they-
do sea salt almonds and dark chocolate.
It was a wrap, right?
That was it.
That's hilarious. Your favorite fruit.
Mangoes. Definitely mangoes.
Take
Any
me
mango.
to the island. Oh, like now.
Mangoes.
Now. You kind of already touched upon this, but just really quickly, just a one word answer. One way someone can channel their inner edible activism.
Genealogy.
Ooh, that was for me.
Genealogy, definitely.
That was for me. All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We're here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., and you can access each episode after it airs at fullserviceradio.org. Be sure to follow me at Food Talks DC on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? If so, please come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just send me a DM on Instagram, or you can email me at melissa@goodsoil. You heard it, goodsoilevents.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to this program on Full Service Radio, broadcasting and recording from the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio programming can be accessed live and archived on fullserviceradio.org. Our talk programming is available on most podcast apps like iTunes and Stitcher, and our DJ sets are available on mixcloud.com/fullserviceradio. Full Service Radio features over 30 weekly shows and over 50 local hosts covering every topic imaginable. If you want to be a guest or get involved, email us at info@fullserviceradio.org. Follow us on Twitter at FullServiceRDO, on Instagram and Facebook at Full Service Radio. Thanks for listening.